All right, welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network and 5 Reasons YouTube channel. We'll get to the floor plan here in a second. Thanks for checking us out on your favorite podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Android, Spotify, or the 5 Reasons YouTube channel where you are right now. And make sure you subscribe to Off the Floor. That's our Discord server. That's where the conversation is continuing, the best place for conversation and information on the Miami Heat. We say the most heat anywhere. Go to the link in the description. You can bypass the Apple upcharge, which is $1 a month. Make it just $2.99 a month. You can cancel at any time. Once you're there, though, you're not going to leave. Check it out. It's Off the Floor. Also, check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, our friends over at Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Put down $5. You get $50 to play. We've also got a promo going on this week for the big game on Sunday. If you're subscribed to Prize Picks using the code 5 and to Big Picks Energy, check it out. You can find it on the App Store, Big Picks Energy. Also with the code 5, that's free. And you have the best card on Sunday. We're giving you an additional $59 in promo funds. So check it out. We're going to start leading into this on Friday now that the trade deadline's over. Make sure you subscribe to Prize Picks with 5, Big Picks Energy with 5. Also, thanks to our friends over at All Pro Construction Builders. You can find them at allproconstructionbuilders.com. Call our friend Danny at 305-484-4429. Again, that's 305-484-4429. We are eventually going to be in hurricane season. Make sure that you get your storm windows and doors now. Quality is their specialty. Again, big Miami Heat fans, family-owned business. They use the best products. Check them out, All Pro Construction Builders. And now we're going to play the song again because we don't have another one yet. Today's episode.
Down the bitch gang. Yikes. 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars. Wearing rubber frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all banned. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust. It's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at 5 Reasons Sports. I got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. We've got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander. Brady Hawk. You can follow at Brady Hawk 305. The trade deadline has passed. There was 2 hours after the trade deadline where I can tell you that those of us who cover the team regularly, who communicate with the Heat about these sort of things, were texting them relentlessly. I felt like I was going to get left on read forever. Are we clear? Are we clear? Are we clear? You saw nothing from Ira, nothing from Reynolds, nothing from Barry, nothing from Anthony, nothing from me. We're all waiting on this. There was nothing else. They were trying to get some things done. And, of course, sometimes it can last past the 3 o'clock deadline because what you got to understand is this is like waiting at a drive-through, okay? Like you have to call all this stuff in. They got to get your order right. They got to make sure that it all matches. Things blow up at the last second. It's not quite as like people think. It's not as high tech as people think it is. It really isn't. And so we thought that maybe they were trying to get something in at the last minute, but at about 4:55, you saw all of us tweeting all clear because that's when we got the all clear that nothing else was happening there. So we are I did order online, Lou. I'm actually waiting on an Uber Eats order right now when Greg's going to take over that portion of the show. Here's what we're going to do today. Okay. It's going to be a little bit looser. We're live. Okay. So when you hear this on the podcast feed, understand that we are going to get to some of the comments here. We're going to grade what they did. We're all going to have to give grades to what they did at the deadline. You can do it either under the circumstances that they were dealt here. Some say some of this was self-inflicted, but that they were dealt with having a player making $48 million who didn't want to play for them anymore and really wasn't playing for them anymore. But we're going to grade it in terms of where they are and where they're going, okay, as an organization now. So let's go over what's happened, and this is now official. It's now official. And, Greg, I'll go to you first on this. As far as I can see here, there was nothing different from what has been reported widely right now, right? Jimmy Butler is going to Golden State. Andrew Wiggins is coming here. Kyle Anderson is coming here because they could not move the contract. PJ Tucker is not coming here. Dennis Schroeder has moved 7 times since we thought the Heat were going to get him. He actually ended up landing in Detroit, so he's not coming here. Davion Mitchell is coming here. defensive guard from Toronto. Alex and I already did an episode on that earlier today, so make sure you check that out if you want to hear about him specifically. The Heat are also getting a first-round pick, correct? Top 10 protected next 2 years from Golden State. If it doesn't convey, then they get an unprotected pick in 27. And additionally, Josh Richardson goes out. His second tenure did not turn out to be as good as his first. The Heat give up, I guess, a second-round pick swap and also a second-round pick. Is that correct? Is there anything that I've missed?
Cash considerations.
Of course.
That's the move. And, as you kind of look at it going forward, and let's all acknowledge that they put in the press release, Wiggins will wear the number 22. So not only is he in the intro graphic, but he's wearing 22. So that's an interesting development and probably a conversation for another day. The only part of this deal, Ethan, and it's what was holding up, I think, getting the final say on had all moves been done, was they didn't intend for Kyle Anderson to end up in Miami, because that ultimately would have got them not only under the luxury tax or the first apron, but the luxury tax. But here's the thing. Because they were working on the Davion Mitchell thing on the side, they basically got in a situation where they were able to reduce at least enough to get under that first apron. They didn't get out of the luxury tax. I think that would have been the ultimate goal, would have been for Kyle Anderson to find another home. And I think they were exploring teams that had trade exceptions and what it would cost to get that done quickly. Ultimately, it didn't. So he comes to the team, and he's a player that they've actually, to my knowledge, they've looked into before. It'll be interesting to see if he gets any run at all. This is really about Andrew Wiggins. And yeah, it's good that it's done. And it just took literally right before we came on air, y'all, this is when the final details drop. That's how long it's taken since the 3:00 deadline.
And the only other news, of course, is that Andrew Wiggins apparently will be wearing 22, as he should. Jimmy Butler's number is not retired at this point. They gave Kyle Lowry 7 after trading Goran Dragic for him, and Goran didn't leave the way that Jimmy did. So I have no problem with Andrew Wiggins getting to wear his number. The number's not retired. It's not in the rafters. I mean, as long as it's not in the rafters, why can't he wear it? I don't have any issue with that whatsoever. I know people are going to say it's petty. It's not as petty as Pat sending out a press release when they got Luol Deng, calling it one of the most important signings in Heat history after, when he was basically replacing LeBron James. So, and Luol played well for them. And actually, I think there's going to be a lot of similarities between the way that Spoelstra uses Wiggins to the way he used Deng, particularly in that last year with Deng, where he led the team in minutes. And I can see that happening with Andrew Wiggins here. Alex, go to you on this. It seems like as I'm following the fans in the other cities, Toronto to some degree, it seems like they really like Davion Mitchell and what he provided there, but particularly Golden State. I'm following their fans, and they are not thrilled about this trade in any way. Like I know Wiggins won a championship for them, and that obviously colors things. He was the second best player on that team, and in the finals for sure, he was their second best player. He was the guy they put on Tatum. He played really well for them. I just think he endeared himself to that community. But I think Jimmy thought wherever he would go, he would be celebrated for going there. And it does seem, at least, that Warriors fans, I know that Steph and Kerr are not 100% in on this. This was a Joe Lacob thing. But it seems like they're going to miss Andrew Wiggins, and I guess that reflects well on him and what the Heat are getting here.
No doubt. I mean, I think it's tough, even if you're getting a guy like Jimmy who has the resume he has, if you're a team like the Warriors, where it's like, he was the second or third best player at worst on a team that won the championship and, was locking up the Celtic stars. Like, he was a big part of that. And apparently all those players really like him. Kerr really likes him. Like, he just seems to be a guy that was liked by everybody. So I get why Warriors fans would be kind of attached to him. Like, that's what happens with fan bases, with guys who help you win championships, who get the job done. Because we've seen from experience here that's kind of where the line is drawn, right? If you don't get that final job done, people will end up just kind of be like, it's fine if they're gone. but he got the job done. He did it on the highest stages. He had a great playoff run for them. So I get why it would be tough for them. And Jimmy is a lot older with age and injury concerns. And, this whole ugly ending with the Heat after he's had ugly endings with other teams. So I get why, like, from the outside, if you're a Warriors fan, it's a little bit tough to swallow. You also gave up your pick in this draft. But if you're just looking at, like, the type of player Jimmy can be, even if you don't think, which I don't, that he is the type of player he was a couple of years ago when they took him to the finals, they got an upgrade. If he does what he's supposed to, right? If he's the Jimmy that I think he was before that Pelicans game, I think they got an upgrade. I think they got an upgrade as far as the second guy to Steph that can create offense for them, stabilize them, and I think just help them win. Now, I think there's some murky fits as far as like their best players there, because it's Kuminga, Draymond, and Jimmy. A lot of those guys are going to be sharing minutes with Steph on the floor, a lot of important minutes when it matters. So, like, Steph is going to deal with a lot of pressure. And I think Kuminga, Jimmy, Draymond, all, like, with their different skill sets, they'll be able to make up for it. But it's going to be tough. It's not going to be like this awesome team just running through the West. There's so many good teams. They're going to have to fight their way to get out of the play-in. And, I think they're going to have, like, a puncher's chance to make a long playoff run in the West. And I don't think that was really possible beforehand. That's no shade at Wiggins at all. I think Wiggins is a good player, but I think just, that's really what's changed for them, is they went from not really having much of a chance to go far to, I think, maybe a puncher's chance.
Brady, let's pivot back onto the other side of this and what the Heat are trying to do. Alex and I talked about this on the podcast earlier today when they got Mitchell, but it seems like there was a clear directive starting with the draft last year to get more athletic, right? I mean, we can add all this together. They've gotten younger for sure. They could have a rotation where the average age is 25 to 26. I mean, that's not something we typically see with them. This is the most they've leaned into a young core really since the 03-04 season, honestly. And we saw the build there, and then obviously they punted on that build a little early because they got Shaq. Somebody became available, which is what they're still going to be waiting for. And on the second half of this episode, I'll kind of get to where I think this is going. But as far as the on-the-floor product right now, strikes me as trying to get younger, more athletic. And I know Mitchell's short, okay? But overall, they're going to put out bigger lineups than they've put out before.
And you're missing a key factor, which I think they're leaning to more than anything, is defense. I've been saying all season where they had to lean into a certain direction of a build, where they had to lean in obviously to the Jimmy side or the Young side. Like, that's what everybody's been talking about. But I've kind of felt like more than anything, they need to lean into either offense or defense with the rotation, because they don't have enough highly talented offensive players to fully lean into the scoring and offense thing. They have a blend of both sides of the ball. So I just think you're seeing a unit that just wasn't able to, they were just average because of the fact that they're playing, a couple good offensive players, a couple good defensive players. And I think finally what you're seeing here is they can lean into the defensive thing. When they started wearing Bam together, when they went big, it wasn't just because Spo wanted to go big. It was because Spo wanted to go defense. Spo wanted to find a defensive base, a defensive system that he could work around those two guys. It just wasn't consistent enough, because I think you see the lineups they had to run around those two to make it work offensively just weren't good enough defensively. And because when you play a Highsmith in that starting lineup, yes, you're adding defense, but there's a certain extent you're going to get offensively. There's not the mobility that you get with the type of Andrew Wiggins. You're not going to get, you can put him in different spots. He can do different things off the bounce. So it allows you to do that stuff. And then Davion Mitchell part of it, I've been saying, if Drew Smith was healthy, Drew Smith would be starting. It's credit to Drew Smith, but it's a credit to his ability of what he does defensively in the point of attack that I just think it fits this roster. It fits those guys. It fits next to Tyler Hero. So it's like Davion Mitchell's a guy that I'm pretty excited about. I think it's going to be interesting to have a guy that can get around screens, that they can get back to the press, where they don't even need to call the press, where Spo can just tell the guy, go harass somebody baseline to baseline. Like, that's the type of thing that he can do. So I think you could kind of see a direction here, not only the youth, which is pretty obvious, they're playing a bunch of young guys, but they're leaning with defense. And it benefits a guy like Tyler Hero, who is kind of efficiently found his game offensively, but you could put him around all these defensive pieces that aren't one-dimensional. Like, as much as I say Andrew Wiggins and the isolation, the on-ball stuff, like, he has some ability to create some stuff off the bounce and get paint touches and do all this other stuff. So I'm interested to see what Spo can do with this roster and who he plays. I think that's a whole other podcast we could do, Ethan, is who's going to be the 9 or 10 man rotation if they go 10, because I think we all agree. I think Tyler, Duncan, Wiggins, Bam, Ware is probably going to be the starting lineup, at least
Agree.
at the beginning. The question's going to be, who's your next 4? Who's your next 5? How are you going to play? If you're, as much as we want Davion Mitchell to play and get the defensive minutes, I don't see him taking Terry out the rotation as much as we talked about it. So are you going to play Terry and Davion Mitchell together off the bench in the backcourt? So those are the questions that I have to figure out, because as much as you're leaning defense and size, there may be some other lineups that you don't have as much of it.
I'm going to have to take a pause in a second. I'm going to let Greg take the reins here, and we're going to introduce our sponsor. But I just want to read you something that I got from a top person, one of the top people at the Heat. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it might give it away a little bit. The word this person uses is delighted. We got 3 solid team guys. 48 hours ago, we thought we were stuck with JB. Our due diligence, 3 really good people, not just basketball players, who fit with our core young group. So I think when we're talking about this, without disparaging anybody else, they wanted to create a better feeling in that room. And I do think you're going to get, as some stories will start to come out, okay? But I just think there's going to be this giant sigh of relief from a lot of people there who you lived with certain things because the player could be elite when it mattered most. And he deserves enormous credit for that. But he took all the air out of that room. And I think what you're starting to see now is, I think your course, your guys who've been all-stars on this team, they've got 2 of them now. Of their younger players, obviously Kevin's been an all-star, but that's long gone. But I think Bam and Tyler, I think it's going to be positive for them. But they did a lot of work on the guys they wanted to bring in. And if you look at, again, the way that Kerr reacted to Wiggins leaving, where, he basically was breaking down in tears, I think we can talk about the basketball stuff. They want to create a cohesive group going forward where there's more equality in terms of the way that they go about doing things. I actually think the guy who's going to benefit the most from this, we've already started to see it over the past couple of weeks, is Bam. I just think there's going to be a sigh of relief there. There's not a pecking order in that regard this way. And I think Wiggins is going to fit really well. I think Spo's going to love Wiggins. I do. And as I get to the grades, he is absolutely his type of player, and he will play him down the stretch. Okay. He's not going to play Terry over him. We'll see if he plays him over somebody else. But I think that he's really going to enjoy coaching him. So we're going to talk about that as we go forward. Let's get to the spot. I'll be back in 2 minutes, and we'll let Greg take over in the time being.
And now it's time for Who's on the Move, sponsored by our friends over at Cousins USA Moving and Storage, family owned and operated since 1996. They can service both residential and commercial moves, whether you're going across town, across the state, across country, and even across the globe. They have a 15,000 square foot private warehouse in Lauderhill, Broward County. The number one priority for Cousins Moving is transparency and being honest with their customers. They have a very low turnover, with most of their movers working for them for over 10 years. So find them online at Cousins Moving on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or visit the website at www.cousinsusa.com/5RSN. They've got an exclusive offer through 5RSN. You get 5 free wardrobe boxes with your next move, so there's no need to pack your clothes away in suitcases. Just mention 5 reasons. And now, who's on the move?
Who's on the move? A lot of players are on the move. Let's go over the deal one more time. And I kind of want to go, we're going to go basketball. We're going to deviate from the transactions and talk basketball with this team. And that is a refreshing thing to even say out loud. So Wiggins is coming. Kyle Anderson is also arriving in Miami. Davion Mitchell is a huge pickup. Just overall, I think it shows that they're trying to find players that fit around what they already have. And it's kind of a breath of fresh air that they're going to basically have some of the awkwardness out of the way. Brady, I'll go to you first on this. Do you think that Kyle Anderson has any role on this team? I know that he wasn't intended to ultimately land in Miami, but do you think that there's a way that he could carve out any productive role for them, throughout the regular season?
I could see a way. It feels it could be a guy that Spo leans into at certain points just to look for a spark or something different. But it almost feels like I don't know how to put it like this, but like a worse shooter version of Jaime, of like an older version of Jaime, where I just think you're going to lean into that version over going to Kyle Anderson consistently. When we talk about the direction of this group, going youthful, going bigger, going to more shooting, I think Kyle Anderson's a guy that could step in and play spot minutes when guys go down, but I don't know about rotation minutes. I just think they've leaned into Pelle Larsson here over the last couple of games. I know nobody watched the last game because there was something else going on during the game, but Pelle Larsson actually played a decent amount of minutes in that game. Like he was, they've leaned into him a little bit. He wasn't a big scorer. He had a big three down the stretch, but the point is, I just think they're going to lean into those type of guys. And that's why I was kind of confused. It's along the same lines of the PJ Tucker thing. Cause I'm like, not only Haywood Highsmith, but I think Keyshawn Johnson's ahead of him in the pecking order. I think Spoelstra is at the point. As much as everybody was joking around saying about PJ Tucker would play because Spo would play him and all that stuff.
No, he wouldn't.
I think Spo is very high on Keyshawn Johnson. And we just haven't been able, see an opening there for him to actually play. But the point is that I just think it's kind of a similar situation with Kyle Anderson. Like I said, there's like legit options here off the bench where you're talking about Rozier, Burks, Davion Mitchell, you have Jovic and Jaquez. You got to go down the line. Like Pelle Larsson, like they have a lot of guys that have options they could play with these last four spots. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know what Kyle Anderson's role is really. I don't think they planned on it. So I don't know how we could play on it because I don't think they thought he'd be on the roster. So I'm sure Spo will find minutes for him at some point, but I don't think it's going to be a major role.
Before I pass the ball back to Ethan, Alex, your thoughts on Davion Mitchell? Because I think that really turned this trade from being like a B- or a B to a B++, like for me anyway. So I'm intrigued by the combination of him and Wiggins defensively. Your thoughts on Davion Mitchell and where he fits before we kind of maybe look at this overall, and I'll pass the ball back to Ethan.
I mean, I mentioned it on the pod that we did, but between Davion, Wig, and Kyle Anderson, like they added 3 good defenders. And I think that's the underrated part about Anderson. I don't expect him to be in the rotation either, but the guy can defend on ball at a solid level. And I think he's a great help defender. 6'9", pretty strong. So he's somebody that you can have there on your depth chart. And I'm guessing, by the way, that you guys are laughing that I'm lagging again. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the ball back to whoever wants to speak next. I'm just sick of it all.
He's so frustrated. I understand. That's it. No, it just we just got a helicopter. That's it. It brought me my food. So it's all good. I gave the helicopter driver a tip. Greg, thanks for taking over there. We'll get to some of the comments here as we go. I want to put something else into context here, and then we're going to grade this, each of us. And I don't know if we're all going to come around the same place here. And again, we got to judge it based on the circumstances. But I think the Heat's position in the East give them a little bit of a cushion here.
Mm-hmm.
Because there really wasn't that far down to go, and there really wasn't that far up to get. Like, they're in this window between the 5th and the 9th or 10th seed, right? And even without Jimmy playing. With Jimmy playing, they were a little bit over 500, barely. With Jimmy not playing, they were basically 500. And so it didn't really seem to matter one way or the other, particularly when he was playing. You didn't know if he was going to give great effort. His best game of the year, they lost because the Detroit game, because of other people's mistakes. Wasn't his fault in that one. He did everything he possibly could. So the feeling is it gives them an opportunity to pivot, let guys play through things, because they know they're not competing for a championship this year. This becomes a bridge year, but the difference between this and other bridge years is they have proven players on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
They've got 3 guys in like this. We talked about it, Greg, in terms of this being they're not going to rebuild. They don't want to do that. They weren't going to tank. But now you look at the way they're set up. This is essentially, it's a little better than a soft reset. Like that was the framing we used, like a soft reset. But you go into this now with 2 guys in Tyler and Bam who've been all-stars, as Wiggins has. So now you have 3 players, 25, 27, 29, who have all been all-stars.
And a champion.
And a champion. And you have at least 3 young players who have shown considerable promise. And Ahakis has taken a step back this year. Okay, we have to acknowledge that. And he's got to find a way through next year to show that he can be a part of this thing long-term if they don't flip him. But with Ware and Jovic, I mean, we've seen it with Jovic when he's gotten the opportunities. We've obviously seen it with Ware. They're further along. Okay, this is not – they didn't have to set it all the way back like some teams did. And now they've got a valuable pick. Like, that's the part of this that I was not expecting, for them to come out with a possible pick in this draft, which is a strong draft, in sort of a place that would be a sweet spot for Adam Simon and his crew, which is they have
possible lottery pick.
Basically, okay? I mean, that's for them. I mean, because you look at the way that he's drafted. They've typically gotten players who should have gotten 8, 9, 10 spots earlier. So if they end up with a pick from Golden State that's, say, 14 in this particular draft, they're going to get a good player to add to this mix, or somebody else that they can flip. So I think when you look at it that way, if you want to just hold on to the disappointment of the way things ended with Jimmy, I get it, okay? Shouldn't have ended that way. Maybe there should have been more foresight and all of that. But you look at the way they come out of it. Teams lose stars and they have to sink. They have to tank. This team is not going to have to do that. And I don't know that the upside with Jimmy on this roster was that great anyway. So it's not like you lost this opportunity to win a championship with him going away. That opportunity was maybe 2 years ago. Again, they had 2 cracks at it in the finals. Denver, they weren't going to beat. The Lakers, they got bad breaks in the finals with Dragic and Bam getting hurt. Nobody expected that finals anyway. And yes, they could have added more pieces as they went that might have given him a better chance. But they weren't winning a title with him now anyway. And so to me, this is, and I'm sort of giving it away right now, but they were forced, and I said this when this all happened, they were forced to take a direction that they should have taken anyway by his actions. And I think he's actually set them on a course to get there faster than they would have. Is that where you're at, Greg?
Yes. This is probably like you said, it needs to happen sooner. Sometimes life pushes you in the direction you need to go, out of your comfort zone. This is also a big bet on the developmental system around these young players. Building, basically, you are creating a system where you have young players supported by some all-stars. We're not going to call them franchise leading players, number 1 option guys just yet, but all-stars in Tyler, Bam, and Wiggins as well. Although I know Wiggins was a little farther removed from that, but you just now have to hope that you curate a situation where you have enough assets and a situation where if a player wants out, you can get in the mix for that and be able to do the bidding. And then in the meantime, just continue to stack young players, bring them into your system. Hopefully you hit. And another cool part of this is that the Miami Heat Twitter account just shouted out Jimmy Butler with a bunch of cool pictures and said it's been a fun ride. So I like to see that. There may not be peace at the highest levels just yet, but at least they're acknowledging him on social.
And we are going to acknowledge him too. We're going to do a full retrospective episode on him sometime over the next few days. We'll get to that. I want to devote an entire episode to it rather than just kind of squeezing it all in here. All right, let's pivot here. I've kind of given mine away a little bit, but I'll go to it more at the end. Alex, are you ready to take it on? You ready to grade what they did?
I mean, if my internet will let me, I'll like under the circumstances, like we mentioned, my opinion hasn't changed much. I think a B is fine. And, I think they can lean into the defensive identity now. I think they can lean into that and really just be a pain in the ass against teams. And maybe they have a chance versus some good teams now, like in the regular season. I don't mean like a long playoff run or anything like that, but they can lean into something like we talked about. I mean, like Brady about, and we mentioned that on the Davion Mitchell pod. Like, it's nice for there to be some sort of clarity. If you would have told me a year ago, however many months ago, you're trading Jimmy for Wiggins, Anderson, Davion Mitchell, yeah, like nobody would have been happy with that. But unfortunately, like that's, things ended up kind of going down the way they did. And honestly, it could have been a lot worse with the way that kind of like, if you look at the returns that other teams got for Jimmy when they traded him, when he was younger and better, like the Heat did pretty much better than all of them, other than like, I guess like the Levine, Bulls getting Levine back or whatever. since he ended up turning into. But even then, like, you got Wiggins, who was the second best player on a finals team. He's still a good player. You know, he's 29, still at like a good age there. You're not getting him too late. Really is a skill set that you needed, is a offensive threat, is going to be a nice fit. I think Mitchell is going to be a great fit. You know, we've all talked about how much they're going to need that defense and how much see what happens after the season, since Davion Mitchell is a restricted free agent, and they're already over the luxury tax. So we'll see what happens if they keep him. But between those two guys, Kyle Anderson, who can kind of be plug and play whenever they need him, if they want to, you know, decide to really lean into it even more, because that's, you know, the defensive stuff. They can do that if they want, right? So they have a lot of playable guys. They have sucks that it ended that way, but now you can move forward, and there is some clarity here as far as what type of team you are, and, you know, just building for the long term.
So we're going with the B there. Brady, where do you grade it?
I will say a B plus, I guess, just because of under the context that you're in. I mean, look, we were at a point where they were bringing up trade packages where we were talking about like Bobby Portis or Chris Middleton or like these Bucks packages. And under the context of what we're talking about, obviously Kevin Durant would be an A plus, but is it really even under the context? Because you'd have to give up everything. How real was that even going to be? So under this context, I'd say pretty close to a B plus, as Alex was talking about, when you kind of picking a direction, picking the defensive side of things, leading into the youth. I think it just matches what they're doing. And honestly, the pick in itself, I think, bumps this up a whole grade, because look, if there's anybody to like, everybody just kind of packages the front office together, it feels like, when everybody talks about them. But Adam Simon hitting on every pick over the last few years, that this entire rotation, the core of this team right now, of this new build, is all the guys from the last few drafts that he was kind of leading the scout there. That matters. That matters why you load up on picks and try to get, you know, a lottery pick in upcoming drafts to try to see if they could find gems in that range, because they continue to do it. There's no reason not to. There's no reason not to try to find talent, especially in a draft where this past draft, people were talking about it not being the best draft, and they ended up with a Khalil Ware. This next draft is supposed to be packed with talent. What do you think you come out of there? So the pick in itself bumps it up, but I will say, yeah, and that too. They're definitely going to land on one if they get 2 picks in that range. So the pick in itself, but I'm a big fan of some of the players that they pick, just because I think it fits Spo. I think Spo's going to, like, Ethan, you talked about before, like watching Spo this season, like, and, you know, we've graded about like his performance this season, the mistakes he's made, the timeout, the rotations. Like, this stuff has gotten to him too. Like, as much as he doesn't talk about it and he's not allowed to say stuff and he acts like everything's okay all the time, this stuff has gotten to him. He just wants to go out there and play basketball and coach basketball. He doesn't want to deal with all of this. So, like, in the context of it all, I think this is going to be kind of like a weight off his shoulders more than anybody else that you talk about in the locker room, that he could go out there and go coach and fit into a style with these new players.
Greg, you know what strikes me here is that Heat fans, there was a lot of discontent about the Jimmy thing, right? And then it kind of turned where more Heat fans sided with the Heat against Jimmy because the way that he acted, even while a lot acknowledged that the Heat maybe could have done more to get him over the top. But coming out of this deadline, it seems like Heat fans are more satisfied than Golden State fans, than Phoenix fans, than a lot of the teams that we were talking about during this process. Because, I mean, I'm grading it a B plus also. So we've got a B plus, we've got a B plus, and we've got from Alex a B. Again, under the circumstances, what they had to work with and what they brought back, the first round pick to me pushes it to at least a B plus, as well as the Mitchell acquisition, because
the pick could make it an A.
If they hit it, yes, if they hit it, which is the key thing. But if I'm going to trust them on anything lately for the past few years, it's going to be that, right? Like we can criticize about certain things. It's very hard to criticize their drafts. And if people are going to still bring up the Precious Maxey thing, I'm going to say again, Maxey was drafted 21st. They didn't pass on him in the top 10. Okay. Other teams passed on Maxey also. And Precious is an NBA player. I mean, they drafted him where he should have been drafted. It's just that there were a couple players in Maxey and Bane who turned out to be better afterwards. You can say that about every team in the league. Okay. So their drafting overall has been very, very good. But, you know, you look at Phoenix right now, their fans are miserable. They basically, I mean, the Heat still believe they started the Jimmy fire. Not only did they not end up with Jimmy after all of that, they have what's been described now as a, quote, toxic locker room. All they were able to do was dump Nurkic. They stuck with Beal after acquiring him last year. So
mess.
these other organizations, I mean, obviously the Lakers stole Doncic, but look at Dallas fans right now. Seriously, like they're worried to bring the players back to Dallas because people are so angry. They're burning things there. If you would have told me 2 weeks ago that Heat fans would be more satisfied than a lot of these other organizations right now, I would not have believed that. Greg.
Oh, I didn't know you were going to me. My bad.
I'm sorry. I
mean, it's the combination of the pick and the players. I think that initially when people saw that all of the players were being rerouted elsewhere, it started to get a little bit like you felt like it was empty if it was just going to be Wiggins. Davion Mitchell revived that for me, along with the pick. The pick was always like, I was shocked that they got it top 10 protected in 2 years and not like lottery protected. Because that's a big difference.
Pick, man.
And so this Davion Mitchell, I think, is what, to flip PJ Tucker, who none of us thought was going to be, anything but like a locker room presence at this point, like kind of Udonis coming back, but not Udonis. You know what I mean? He's not that guy. It was better to turn that into a functional player that they can actually use. We went into the day saying, boy, if they could address something, point of attack defense would be nice. So, I mean, I said B+. It could be as much as an A. We'll see with the draft pick. And they picked a direction. So, I mean, a lot of the things that fans have been asking for, they got today. And I think that's why you see the fans more excited than maybe some of these other fan bases that got bigger names.
I'm going to let you grade it. I'm going to let you grade it now, and then we're going to get briefly into the buyout targets because that's what everybody's asking. We'll do full episodes on that, but we'll try to touch on it here quickly. Greg, how would you grade it?
B+.
Okay, so that's kind of where we're all
a chance for an A. And I really think that you have to have that qualifier along with it until you see what happens with that pick.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Now let's reset this again before we get to the buyout thing here. Does anybody have an expectation, and we'll go quickly on this one, that this team can get out of the first round with the current roster?
I got my eyes set on one team.
Yeah,
the Indiana Pacers. I'm looking right at you.
It does seem like this team is built for the Pacers in some ways, right? Like I feel like
Knicks. I feel like that there's some matchup stuff there that it used to make me feel a little weird with some of the matchups with how big they were playing and long, front court players. This is a situation where now that he can match up, I don't know. We'll see if that's a 3-6 kind of matchup.
The Magic.
Well,
the Heat and the Magic playing each other at this point would be some ugly basketball.
Yeah. It would, but the problem is either of those teams going to be high enough to play each other in the first round. I mean, I don't think there's a viable path to the Heat to get in the top 4.
No, it's
right.
The 3-6.
I mean, they're 3 games back.
So we're talking. I don't see a viable path for them to get in the top 4. But if they're 5 or beyond, then we're talking about basically Boston, Cleveland, New York, Milwaukee, right? Brady, would you give them a chance against the Bucks as currently constituted in a 4-5 matchup?
I don't know. I don't know if I give them to Alex's point, like they have to really break away with a matchup. I really do believe that. Like in all honesty, it has to be maybe an Orlando matchup. Even I know it's gonna be tough, but like just because of the pure fact that it could be absolutely ugly basketball. I have trouble thinking that a Knicks series would be ugly basketball. I know that's the historic version, but I just think this version of this Knicks team, I don't know. I just feel like they do have the ability. They have the bodies to throw at Miami's offensive valves like Tyler. Like I just don't like that matchup for him because they have the big wings to throw at him. And that's kind of their big way of getting through a playoff series offensively. So the Bucks, the Knicks, the Celtics and Cavs feel like they'll be in that 1-2. Obviously, that would be Miami battling through a play-in and then ending up in that spot. But it'll be interesting. I don't know. Can they claw their way into a 5 spot and play Indiana. That's kind of the path. That's the only path here is where you could find a way to get up there. Who's in the 5 right now? Is it Milwaukee? So that would be so you would need Milwaukee to like really fall off here. You need Kuzma just to like really be a bad fit for this Milwaukee team and just tank the season. So it'll be tough. But hey, maybe the Heat find their joy. Maybe the vibes get right here and they start playing good basketball. I don't know.
Well, it does seem again like the vibes will be a little bit better. Remember, they've had a $48 million hole. We keep saying that. Like, we can argue about what they got for Jimmy, but they really haven't had Jimmy of late. And not only have they not had Jimmy, they've had the Jimmy distraction. I do think that will help them. To me, the biggest issues now for this team this year going forward is what Brady's talking about. Every team is going to game plan Tyler now. Every team. He is going to continue to have to come up with counters to that. And there's going to be some games that are ugly. Wiggins is not a go get you 35 guy. Okay. I mean, he's averages 17. He's been around there in recent years. He's not typically been a big rebounder, although he did a little bit more of that during the Warriors championship run. He can get you back. He can get you some buckets, but he's not a guy like give him the ball, get out of the way type player. Even though he was a number 1 overall pick, that's not him. He's not going to bully guys with matchups the way that Jimmy did. It's going to be on Tyler primarily offensively, and they're going to have to continue to find ways to scheme to get him his looks, but also he's going to have to be efficient with it. He's going to have to be disciplined with it. He's got to cut down on the turnovers. I mean, they have essentially turned this offense in a lot of ways over to him. The other guy, though, offensively is
Bam.
Jovic is Bam, yes, has been better, but I point to Nico. I just think Nico gives you what we've seen lately. There's more there for him to get to. And to me, a lot of this offensive, if they're going to be much better defensively. I believe that. Okay. But a lot of this offensively is going to be on, can Tyler continue to grow his team scheme him? And is there more with Jovic this year? That to me will determine their upside. All right. People want
you got to keep playing. I just want to say, you got to keep playing Duncan. I just want to keep making that point because with all these defensive pieces they're playing around, can you play that man? Like, can we not be sitting here in a situation where you play him 10 minutes even when he's playing well? Like, the only way to really make this offense work around the defensive pieces is to have Duncan Robinson flying off screens constantly and flying off handoffs and just causing those misdirections. You can play him now around the defensive pieces on the other end of the floor. So I just want to make that point.
It's funny that you mention Duncan because, as I said to him before the season, you're still here. Oh, Lynette, we appreciate that. Make sure you go to Insurance by Lynette. Make sure you go to insurancebylynette.com, by the way, for all your car insurance, homeowners insurance, renters insurance needs. And, of course, one of our favorite fans here that's on all of our platforms as well. So we appreciate it, Lynette. And, of course, there she is, 954-581-8800, and she will be sponsoring the post-game show tomorrow night, as she always is, with the player of the night. The buyouts, everybody's asking about this. We'll do a full episode on this, but the important thing is the Heat can get buyout players now. Mm-hmm. Previously, when they were over the first eight, they couldn't get players who were over the $13 million threshold. Now they can. So we're going to see who's out there. It appears that Bruce Brown might be kept. Okay, that's
one of those. 15 roster spots, though.
Yeah, right. I want to slow everyone's roll on the buyout thing.
Yeah.
Because they didn't get out of the luxury tax, folks. And so that means if they sign a buyout player, he's going to cost more than just what his salary is. So we will see if they think that there's a player that can make them that much better, but I would caution everybody on them being super aggressive in the buyout market. Maybe I'll be wrong, but
one thing to consider is they have, depending on where they're at, if they think they can compete, they're more likely to spend. We know that.
That's true.
And they have saved a lot of money in this deal already.
That's true.
But you got to wait like Alec Burks or somebody in order to get a buyout guy. Correct.
That's true. No, there are things they would have to do. But as this Heat source said to me, and we'll close here, AE is a wizard. So they'll figure something out, okay, I think if they need to get a guy. The point is they have the flexibility now. Everybody talked about the aprons. This wasn't just about money. This was about flexibility. It's about having all these various vehicles. We'll see if they use them now because they can go out and get a buyout player of their choice, but then they're going to have to clear the roster spot, and then it's going to cost them a little bit more in real dollars but it's something at least they are allowed to do. Before, there were certain players they literally could not go after. And that's the key point that we've made is people have made this a lot about money, but in terms of the aprons, it's more so about the flexibility in the vehicles. We'll hold them accountable if they don't spend the money to get better. Yeah. Okay. When they have
they have optionality.
They have optionality now. All right. We appreciate everybody for joining. We got a lot more to get to, and I got another podcast to jump on. Thanks to Alex. Thanks to Greg. Thanks to Brady. Thanks to Lynette for sure. Thanks to our other sponsors and Cousins Moving for sure. Check them out as well. Again, Dennis Schroeder should hook up with them. Friends over at Prize Picks, All Pro Construction Builders. Have a good night, everybody. Check us out on Off the Floor. Did I mention them at that already? Go to Off the Floor. We'll be on there all night. I saw people on there at 4 a.m. last night, so join us there. Have a good one.